Traumas are they're interesting because everything is slightly different. But at the same time, a lot of times people will treat the symptom and not the root cause, because you have to go back to the root cause and change that, or change the emotion that is attached to it. We can't change the event. The event always is going to be a part of your life. But anytime we attach a meaning to something, an emotion, there will come a point in time where that emotion will become part of our future. And so if we can change the emotion, the meaning of an event, we can change what the future looks like.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Kevin, and today we're joined by Kelly Meyer. He is the founder of Project Find Your Fire, been a coach for 30 plus years. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. I'm excited to be here.
30 years is a long time. We were talking that before the podcast, I was just saying, you've been coaching since I was 7 years old. And so I'm sure there's so many things that you could have been. You could have been a baseball player. You could have been like a sushi chef. But of all the things that you chose to do, you chose coaching and turned it into a business. So how did you end up here?
Okay, so there's a longer story to it. And let me give you the very synopsis of the beginnings of my story. And if we want to go into that topic later, we can. But I was habitually truant growing up, spent more time in a pool hall, mostly because I loved playing pool. And that began my fascination with watching people and human behavior. So it started very young. But anyway, I ran into a crazy old drunk guy one morning who gave me a one-liner that absolutely changed my life, 100%. He still visits me metaphorically. His one line, basically the conversation was, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Kelly." And he said, "No, you're not. And the sooner you figure that out, the better off you'll be." I never saw the old man again in my life. That set me on a course I played in a band. Of course, I was, one of those hoods growing up in the late 70s and the early 80s and doing that thing. And so I did graduate high school with, I think it was like a 1.9 GPA, played in a band, and we did really well, landed a record deal with Capitol. And the band sort of fell apart. And I said to my wife, like, I don't know what to do with my life now. Like, I've screwed up everything so badly to this point. I don't know what to do. She said, "You love music and you love kids. Why not be a teacher?" So I said, "Okay, be a teacher." So I did my undergrad in music education and psychology, did my master's work in music education with coursework in psychology, and then did my doctorate in education with an emphasis in human behavior. But when I started teaching way back in the day after getting my undergrad, I realized very quickly that there were a few kids who started hanging out a lot in my office and discovered they didn't have a real home to go to and wasn't the place they wanted to spend their time. So it just started with a casual conversation, giving tips and tricks and different things and, try to motivate them through life and get them through the day. And one day I had a dad call me and he said, "Have you been talking to my kid?" And I thought I was in trouble. I thought I was going to get my butt beat. But I was honest. I said, "Yeah, I have been." And then he said, "Would you talk to me too?" "Yeah, for sure." And so that started me with parents. So that's really when the coaching started, like right away. And that led to, working with the friends of the parents and then doing workshops and starting doing small keynote stuff. So that's always been sort of my double career, education and coaching and then speaking, until 2016. University here was going through, where I was working, I was going through a reorganization and nobody really kind of knew if they were going to hold their positions or not. It was really a stressful time. So I talked to my wife about it and she said, "You know what? You're spending so much time coaching. Why don't you just make the jump?" And so I did. I left the career of academia that I'd been a part of for most of my life. And it was a scary jump, but I haven't looked back one day.
What was going through your mind? What made it so scary at the time?
Well, it's because it's something that I had always done. It's going into the unknown, and the unknown is a scary place. And we all encounter that. And I work through that with my clients too. When they have to make changes in their life or want to level up in some way, it's different. I've had people who have literally worked harder at keeping their depression than doing the work to get out of it because they don't know what it's like to live without it. And that's a scary place to be. And so that's why it was scary for me.
You know, it's really interesting. In that short story you told, you shared the story about like, hey, are you talking to my kid? Well, can you please speak to me? I'm sure that's not your marketing strategy today in today's day and age. And so kind of curious, like, who is finding you? How do they find out about you? Like, kind of curious there.
I don't know. I think it's just, I've been told that I have the personality that is welcoming, that people feel being around. And I think that once kids are around me, that it's just, they tend to open up to me. But at the time when I was teaching too, when I started teaching, I still had the band hair. So, in the ponytail down to my belt, I still had the earring, and the administration was okay with that. And I think that helped to make those troubled kids, feel a little bit more comfortable rather than me wearing a suit.
And fast forward to today, are you still like finding that you're speaking to more kids? Are you speaking to more adults? Like, is there kind of a commonality between the people you're coaching now?
It's a pretty good mix. My youngest client is 11. My oldest is 78, I think. But, it's kind of an interesting dichotomy because they're living two very, very different lives, the adults and the teens. But at the same time, when you get right down to the root of the matter, we all have the same problems. It's a matter of what path do you take to make that change in your life? Because you have to work with adults differently than you work with teens, clearly. And I've also discovered that when I do work with teens, it's greatly effective to include the parents as much as I can. So in an hour session with a teenager, it begins the first 5 or 10 minutes with the parents. So let's talk about the homework. Let's talk about what's going on in your home. Let's talk about what life is like. And you get two different perspectives. And then I'll spend the next 40, 45 minutes with the kid by themselves because there are things they don't necessarily want to say in front of mom and dad. And then we wrap with everybody back together and with the parents so that we're all on the same page. That's so key. And so with the parents, I'll say, okay, here's what we worked on today. Here's the homework. This is what I expect when they get home. This is the behavior change that you can expect to see. So if you see something different, don't question it because that's part of what's going on.
And like, I know you've been in business for a while, but like, are you mostly getting referrals at this point? Or like, is your name getting out there? Like, are you doing in real life speaking events? Are you doing social media stuff? Kind of curious to see that too.
I'm doing a lot of keynote speaking, a lot of workshops. And again, sometimes it's a workshop for a youth group. Sometimes it's a corporate workshop. So we tailor our workshops to the audience. We don't use template types of workshops. Coaching wise, I get a lot of referrals. You can always use 1 or 2 new clients, but my load is pretty healthy.
Yeah. And it seems like there's this attention to detail and like not attention to detail, but this attention to care, right? You mentioned, hey, you don't use any templates. I can imagine these conversations you're having are pretty in depth and pretty deep. You're holding a lot of space. Do you do all this by yourself? Do you have a team? Like, how do you manage all these different clients?
My wife runs the business with me. So she has her own clients. She does her own speaking gigs. Sometimes we speak together or do workshops together. But how do we manage? I still manage the way us old people are used to managing. This is, my calendar and with the pencil.
Is that a new Google update? No, just kidding.
Right. And at the same time, we know that the business world is moving. And so trying to learn AI and jump on that bandwagon has been kind of interesting.
The thing I want to ask you too. Okay. So you're doing these keynotes, you're doing these workshops, your name is going out there. And so like one of the things I'm I'm sure people are kind of like, oh my God, how do I work with you? Or, oh my God, how can my kid work with you? And so I'm kind of curious, right? Like, you mentioned you have corporate workshops as well, but like majority of your offerings, are they like one-on-one? Are they group? Do you offer group trainings, organizational trainings? Kind of interested what your coaching offerings look like.
A little bit of everything. So I do one-on-one coach. As far as the coaching goes, that's probably the bulk of it. It's one-on-one. We do group coaching. We have done couples coaching. When it comes to workshops, everything from a small group of 10 to 12 to larger groups of 300. When we do a workshop, it's literally a workshop. You're not going to hear me speak. It's not a seminar. It's a workshop, and we create a workbook.
No rush. Take your time.
One handy. This one is for unlocking the relationship code. But each workshop, you get your own workbook, and we will do the work together. You're going to answer the hard questions. You're going to write them out. You're going to do the thing. And then we're going to talk about how that changes and how to flip the switch and how to move to a different aspect of that, a different perception.
You know, one of the other things I'm pretty curious about, because you have so much experience and you have so many different offerings, is like a lot of coaches, they're working in silos, they're working by themselves. And especially for the new coaches, one of the number one things that they struggle with is like pricing. They're like, oh my God, what do I charge? How do I figure out that first number? How do I put this together? And of course, Kelly, you don't have to give any hard numbers, but how do you think about pricing and pricing strategies today, whether that's like hourly, value-based, retainers, packages? Are there any key lessons that you learned that shaped your perspective? We'd love to hear that.
If we're going to do a workshop or a keynote, there's a deposit that happens before you ever get onto my calendar. Once the deposit happens, then I solidify that date, and then the remainder would be paid at the end of the event. Sometimes people say, get the check as soon as you get there, but I'm not that hard and fast about it. What to charge for a keynote or a workshop, it depends completely on the event and their budget. If it's an event who in the past has had Mel Robbins as their primary keynote, then I know they have a budget. Local corporate gig for 15 insurance salesmen, I know that their speaker budget probably isn't as much. And so you just sort of tailor to that and feel them out. I don't have any hard and fast numbers for that. If I do an event for a church, or I do a lot of recovery centers. I do workshops for recovery centers too, to help them sort of rediscover who they are. If I do that or a church event, I don't charge anything. If I have to travel for it, I ask to reimburse travel, but I come and do the work for free. But when it comes to coaching, you'll pay up front, and what to charge, I guess you have to sort of figure out what you believe you're worth.
How does one discover that though? Like their worth? Is it like...
I think it's trial and error. I think when you get started, I always sort of recommend to my clients who are wanting to become coaches to start off doing 3 free sessions for your friends, and then just sort of work through them the way you would work with a normal client. That'll give you a feel of, the pacing of whatever pathway they need to go through. That'll give you a feel of how quickly you can, find the answer to help mitigate whatever they're working with. And from there, you can sort of get an idea. I mean, you can look around and see what other people are charging and then just sort of go from there.
What do you feel like is the magic behind 3? Why not like 3.5 with a kind of half friend? Or I'm just kidding. With like, why 3, not 7, not 10, right?
The coaching packages that we offer is a 6-session package and a 12-session package. And so that's why I say for 3, it's enough to give you a handle on what your coaching is going to look like and feel like. And within 3 sessions, you should be able to have your client get a really hard grasp on whatever they're struggling with and already be starting to get through that stream.
It's almost like getting proof of concept of your coaching and just like really testing out like how well your coaching skills are, kind of.
Yeah. And really, the goal is within the first session, you should already be breaking ground on whatever the struggle is and making headway. Beyond that, then it just becomes repetition, and emphasizing specific points. And sort of guiding back onto the path. But you should be able to, as a coach, get solid results within your first hour, depending. Now, it completely depending on what we're working with.
When you mentioned kind of finding your value, right? Like, I'm kind of curious, like the value of your coaching, what are some transformation? Like, if you're thinking about a particular transformation that's top of mind, what's the most impactful one that you've personally helped facilitate?
Traumas are always, they're interesting because everything is slightly different. But at the same time, a lot of times people will treat the symptom and not the root cause, because you have to go back to the root cause and change that, or change the emotion that is attached to it. We can't change the event. The event always is going to be a part of your life. But anytime we attach a meaning to something, an emotion, there will come a point in time where that emotion will become part of our future. And so if we can change the emotion, the meaning of an event, we can change what the future looks like. I enjoy working with depressants because I think they're surprised at how quickly they can get out of that if they choose to. And that's where the work comes in, is, getting them back out. I've had people, one instance comes to mind where it was almost time for a session with a young lady, and she sent me a message and she said, I can't meet today. Today is just way too hard for me. I'm in bed crying, covers over my face. I can't meet today. I'm like, this is exactly when I want to meet with you. All right. I don't want to meet you on a good day. I want to meet you right now. Bring your phone underneath the covers with you and let's do this right now. And she did, and made great strides. But that's when I want people, is when they're really struggling. That's when we can make the most ground.
It's always really interesting to hear the impact of coaches' work, right? And yeah, I think like hearing these stories is really, really important too, because, and it's kind of funny because there's kind of like a dichotomy of pricing, like of knowing someone's value. There's like your market value, and then there's also like the
intrinsic value, emotive value.
Yeah. And so I always love hearing like, how do people sort that like out? And I think you explained it as well. That's really interesting. The other thing I'm very, very curious about, you've been in the game for quite a while, 30 plus years, right? And so where do you want this coaching business to take you in the next few years? Do you have desires to scale more? Do you want to hire people? Do you like it keeping it small? Do you have secret dreams that no one knows about? What's top of mind for you?
I've got a couple books that I want to get finished up, and I keep saying that I don't have the time to do that right now. And the truth of the matter is I'm not making the time to do that right now. It is hard because we have to coach ourselves sometimes also, right? As far as scaling the business, yeah, I would always like to do more. The speaking gigs, I would love bigger stages, and I love the opportunity to share a message. And so to be able to do that at a bigger scale would be nice.
It's interesting. Do you have any like dream stages that you want to speak at?
No, I don't have a specific stage, but I'm thinking 10,000 plus. 3 to 5 has probably been the larger stages that I've been on so far, but I'd like to hit that 10 plus mark.
What is it about the 10 plus mark that fires your passion or your desire?
It's just the next mark ladder. It's the next rung that I want to hit. I don't think that number itself is a magical number for me. I think that's just the next rung that I want to attain to.
Yeah, the next progression. I love it. Now, one of the other things I like to talk about on this podcast is like, we see this on Instagram or social media a lot of times where like you see sports highlights, right? You see the knockout punch, you see the like half court shot, but there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that isn't so sexy sometimes. And so I wonder, like in this current season of your business right now, what are some growing pains that you're kind of noticing? Is there anything unexpected that is happening in this season right now that you're comfortable sharing?
In the season right now, no, I don't think so. Offers are coming in, clients are coming in. It's actually really good. Thinking back through the growth, that doesn't mean that, I should sort of rephrase that everything is good, but that doesn't mean that everything is good. So what I mean by that is I think it's important for coaches to understand that we also need to do the work. We also need our own coaches. I have coaches. My wife has coaches. Some of the greatest coaches in the world have their own coaches. Tony Robbins has his own coaches. So I think it's important to understand that we as coaches are going through the same things that our clients are going through. I heard a comment one time that, it must be great to have your life in order. It's not at all. I struggle with the same thing. I had a woman, I was at a grocery store, maybe about 30 miles from my home. And it was a time I was doing a lot of Facebook Lives. And this woman started following me around in the aisles, like peeking around corners. And I thought, she's stalking me. This is crazy. And finally she approached me and she said, I watch your videos. And I said, well, thanks. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. It really does. And then she said, why you got to be so happy all the time? And she meant it. She was mad that I was happy all the time. And that's where I had to pause. I'm like, I wake up with the same emotions you do. I have days of sadness and angst and anxiety and frustration and fear. I experience the same thing. I just choose not to live there. I've learned how to mitigate those and sort of work my way through them, which is what I do with people now. But at the same time, we have to keep ourselves in check. Lots of times when we're doing a workshop, I do most of the speaking and most of the interacting with people. And my wife will always sit on the side with the workbook and she's doing the work, at this stage in our life. And somebody said to me, we were doing a workshop and they said, we've done this before. We did this like a year ago. This is, we've been through this. I'm like, yeah, but she's been doing it for 30 years and she's doing the work. You're a different person today than you were 6 months ago, a year ago. I'm going to be a different person at the end of this day than I am right now. We all go through that. We all evolve. And so we have to keep revisiting that and continue to do the work. So even though I say, everything's good, at the same time, everything is right. It's good. At the same time, we still do the work.
Speaking about doing the work too, something I'm also very curious about is you mentioned most coaches have coaches. I even have a coach too, right? And so most coaches have coaches. One of the things that a lot of coaches I see or business owners, they invest into things like other people's coaching, their training, marketing team members, a lot of different things. List goes on, right? And so I'm kind of curious, right? Like in your 30 years of experience, what's the most overrated piece or business investment that you made so far? And what's kind of the most underrated? Kind of curious there.
Most overrated, I don't know. Let me start with the most underrated. The most underrated investment that we can make as coaches is investing in ourselves. We always say that personal growth isn't about us. And now it's true. I want to be a better person tomorrow than I am today. But it's about everybody else around us, because if I can be a better person just a little bit, like my wife, we've been married 32 years, but she wants me to be a better husband, just a little bit. My kids want me to be a better dad, just a little bit. My clients need me to be a better coach, even just a little bit. So by making myself better, by investing in myself, I'm actually investing by everybody around me. And I think that's the underrated investment that we can make, is doing the work ourselves. And my wife and I decided very early on in Project Find Your Fire that we were going to treat this as a profession. I come from academia as a professor. I know what personal development looks like. She comes from a corporate background. She knows what personal development looks like in that area. And so we required a certain number of hours or events for the benefit of ourselves so that we can show up better for everybody around us. That's the most underrated. Back to the most overrated investment. I'm not sure. There are investments that I wouldn't necessarily make, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus or make this sound flippant by any means, but, in the past 5 years, and you too, I'm sure, have seen this abundance of online coaching certifications. Become a certified coach for $9.99 or whatever it is. People then believing that if they take this 5-hour course, that suddenly they're, a qualified coach. And that's just not.
That's really, really funny. I have seen that pop up quite a bit with all the certifications.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, last question for you. how can people find you and connect with you?
Go to the website, projectfindyourfire.com. You'll see a coaching tab there. You'll see some resources there. You'll see a few items in the shopping area. You can also find me on Facebook, Kelly Meyer. You can go to Project Find Your Fire on Facebook or my LinkedIn. I think most everything has all the other links on it. So once you find one of them, you can find them all.
Something that kind of speaks to me as I'm looking at my I think I mentioned I used to be a drug dealer. I used to be a pharmacist, and I have really bad writing. And as I look through all my notes that I wrote down, one of the things that stuck out to me about you, Kelly, is that one, you're a great storyteller. That first story of like the drunk guy like in the pool hall, that really caught my attention. Also, that story about like, are you speaking to my kid? I was like, oh, dude, Kelly's definitely getting beat up, but it was so funny how you flipped it. But I think it's also really, really interesting, right? Like, I think as I get older, something I reflect and I look at my friends, a lot of them, there's this sunk cost bias where they feel like, since I've been doing this my whole life, I have to continue doing this. But you're an inspiration of like, no, you can actually do something very, very different. You can start a coaching business. You can start, the possibilities are endless, right? And, it kind of starts with, as you said, doing the work. So anyways, Kelly, that's my long-winded way of saying, hey, I appreciate your work. Your work matters, Kelly. And thank you for sharing your time, your stories, and wisdom on the podcast today. So I appreciate you.
Thank you, Kevin. I had a great time talking today. I think I could have talked to you for another hour.
For sure.
But I know that we're on a timeline. So thanks for having me on, and I really appreciate it.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.